We are live. Good data morning, everybody, wherever you are. Good data afternoon, evening. Doesn't quite matter as long as it's good, and it's good data, of course. How is your morning so far? Please let us know where you are joining us from. We'd love to know. I am on the West Coast, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and Diana is.
In Bucharest, Romania, so Eastern Europe. There's a 10-hour difference between us right now.
There you go. Diana is visiting her family back home, so it is definitely quite the difference between us. Let us know where are you joining from? What is your favorite morning drink? Mine is a latte, and look what I got. You see, my
Woohoo!
mug with I run on data and coffee. Isn't that awesome?
Love it.
I just unpacked it yesterday, so really happy with it. By the way, it kind of looks small, maybe? To me, it did. I was surprised. Look at this. I was surprised when I unpacked it, and it seemed a bit tiny. It's a traveler mug, a camping mug. But then I was surprised. It's the same quantity as my regular mug, which definitely seems a
Wow.
bit bigger. Anyhow, we have a special guest with us today, Bob Heath, and we're going to talk about data prioritization. We're going to learn quite a bit about it. We're going to share stories. And Diana, do you mind doing the introductions? But first, do want to mention that we do have people joining from everywhere, Windsor and from Mozambique. Wow.
Wow.
Maryland, from Zagreb. By the way, we have this game that we play from time to time, Ticket to Ride. Zagreb is always one of my favorite destinations to connect to. And of course, India, and well, very nice to see you, Mark Eric, from Montreal. And definitely there are so many more people coming in, and we welcome you all. And sorry for interrupting, Diana. Go ahead.
Well, I'm very happy to introduce Bob. He has a very interesting life experience. So on a personal level, together with his wife, Bob just celebrated his 45th wedding anniversary. Wow.
That's the
He has
biggest
five children.
accomplishment.
Really, I think so too. And five children, eight grandchildren. And right
Wow.
now, they are in the process of relocating to Greenland, South Carolina from the San Francisco Bay Area. Professionally, his commitment is, and I quote, I love this, everyone promises to deliver IT to the business. Less than 5% do. I am the one of the 5%. His professional passion is simplifying the complex. Love it. Bob's professional portfolio includes having served on two U.S. President's Advisory Councils, on three California State Governors Advisory Councils, as a member of national governmental leadership teams, and as a member of multiple Fortune 100 advisory boards. And his expertise encompasses business planning and design, enterprise strategic planning and implementation, enterprise business architectural frameworks, team vision and management over team and internal and external teams. He is now the chief architect at Heath Associates and is helping organizations identify their core competencies. Welcome, Bob Heath.
Let's bring him on. Give him a round of applause. We're really in the presence of
Wow.
royalty here. Thank you so much for being on the show, Bob.
We should have had my wife come in because that would have level set everything. So I do have a question, George. You held up a Canon cup. Is that a Canon lens?
It is,
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Okay. Okay.
It's
Well, right off the bat, we're on the wrong side. I'm a Nikon. Yeah.
You know
So
what? My other camera was a Nikon, so I did start with a Nikon, and then some of my research pointed me towards Canon just because it was a little bit cheaper. So for budget constraints, I switched to this one, and it had a good lens that I could use. But yeah, my dad is definitely a Nikon too.
well, then you know those discussions, so we won't go any further down there. I think outside of the current environment with the political debates going on, and that's one of the other discussions that can get just as heated. So,
Yeah, and the funny thing is, after I bought this, maybe half a year or so after, when I was looking at other lenses to purchase, I could see that the Nikon ones were actually a little bit more affordable and better in quality. So that I was questioning, did I make the right move here? But yeah, anyhow. So today's topic really is data prioritization. And you do have quite a bit of experience, and not just in this, but you definitely have quite a bit of experience about it. And I've participated in one conference last year where I met you. I think it was at the Sync in Portland, no, San Francisco. And that's where you had a great presentation and you shared quite a few stories. Hoping that in your treasure box you'll be able to find a few that you could share with us as well. But let's start again with today's topic and see really what is this about.
Excellent. When you put that up there, first of all, you made a strong impression at that same conference. So I've been following you since then and really enjoying a lot of your topics. I just went through your dark data topic in part of my research for this. One of my core points is early on in my life, I was fortunate enough to hear a discussion. And the discussion was, where do you focus on IT? And the fast-paced movement and changes going on there, growing up in Silicon Valley, I really related with that. Or do you focus on the human side of the equation? And through that discussion, I said, wow, yeah, they got a point. Technology was changing, I think, every 3 years at that time, foundational changes, and that's done nothing but accelerate. But at the time, human nature hadn't changed over hundreds of years. Mm-hmm. And so I asked myself the simple question, where do I want to spend my time? Learning once and then applying and maturing that, or multiple? And both are great avenues. It's just in your personality. And so I moved over to the human side of the equation, and fortunately, and just pure luck, that was really lacking in the industry. The technology industry, and I still see that lacking. So, I've stayed with that, and it's allowed me to go in and talk to major organizations, major companies, governments. You're up in Vancouver. I did the Canadian healthcare system, partnered with IBM, and we piloted out of British Columbia.
Well, I'm familiar with that project. And Deanna, because of Deanna, she worked.
I used to work at Vancouver Coastal Health.
Oh, there you go. So the results of it. I've talked to a handful of people that have come back and told me how they personally experienced the results out of that. But my whole focus there and where it surfaced was on the human side of the equation. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? So when you put up the data, I've been looking over the last 6 months saying that's the hugest opportunity, is how are we handling data? And I went on the negative side of it. How we handle the plethora of data, data hoarding, and that. So your dark data, I did some research on that, and that led me into noisy data, what I'll call data clutter, or useless data. And how are we going to get our hands around it? I had an interesting multiple meetings last week with Google, and it was all around their AI and the intelligence, because this is getting so large and so out of control. I don't think there is a human solution to it. It's got to be human solution aided by something. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what I mentioned at the conference in San Francisco. What is the organization about? And in an organization that covers both public sector and private, you got a group of people, they started a business. You got a group of people, and they're an agency for healthcare for Canada, and that. So the organization is wherever you have a group of people that are looking towards a common cause. And when you ask them, what's your core competency? What is that common cause? 70% of them, literally, in my own personal experience, 70% can't articulate in a sentence or two why they exist. So if you don't know why you exist, how are you going to start prioritizing your data and consuming it? And what you're doing is we're building these huge haystacks. Mm-hmm. And the needle that really can apply to why we exist is just being submerged, and now the haystacks are becoming oceans. Mm-hmm. And that. So how are we going to surface out the crucial data and separate it? And you mentioned I'm just moving, and my wife and I have 40 years of clutter, physical clutter. We weighed 400 pounds of documents.
Wow, just documents alone.
It's just papers, letters, physical documents. And that isn't even getting into our digital files. And we're sitting there saying, why are we going to pay to move, an IRS paper from 1983?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I mean, most people on this call probably weren't even born then. And so, yeah. And what it was is when you get that much and then you say, hey, I need this piece of information. Well, how are you going to find it? Are we making it simpler? Are we making our human side of the equation? Are we making that simpler? Are we able to focus on, why our organization exists, whether it's a small business, a nonprofit group, whatever it is, or are we making it more difficult? And this idea that we have all this information, so when you mentioned that and put out that on LinkedIn, it was why we were going through this decluttering physically. And I said, yeah, I see this everywhere. It's been there forever. This plethora, we got people, we had a meeting one time about how to, time management, being in business. And they asked the question, how many people save all their emails? And one of the gentlemen in the room had 20 years of every single email, both personal and business.
Wow.
And when they started talking about decluttering, organizing, and becoming more efficient, and that he had to leave the meeting. He physically started getting very tense. And it's not a right or wrong thing. It's what are you trying to accomplish? And does this assist you towards that? Or is it getting in the way? And I think today in the industry, we're just starting to realize the Frankenstein monster that we're creating.
Absolutely.
That's preventing us. If you want to distract and timely with everything going on in the world today, mankind hasn't changed for hundreds of years. And there's one method when you want to distract, you make it noise. And so you create noise and just, I'm not going to go down that avenue of the politics or anything, but look back in history and that's the common answer. We're self-inflicting that on ourselves with how we're prioritizing our data and what is important. And when we can't answer why our core competency, who we are as a business, as an organization, what is it? And you can't say that in 2 or 3 sentences. Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it well enough. Well, to me, simple is very concise, very articulated, and everybody within the organization can follow that. Now you can ask the question, hey, where does this come in? Doesn't mean throw it all away, but at least start surfacing out the crucial information and make it readily available. Don't bury it in the plethora of other information that you may need.
Absolutely. And go ahead.
There were a few things that stood out from what you said and that I find crucial. You were saying about all the letters and the paperwork, the documents that you had, but you didn't know that they were there and that they were maybe containing some important and relevant information, but everything was hidden and put in the same place. And, I just wondered and asked myself, how many things do we actually gather and have that are not relevant and then keep us from the important ones or seeing the important ones? And it's the same with data. So that was one thing. Then the second thing, you asked, okay, how easy is it for someone to find the crucial data, right? So that's a human factor of it. How easy do you make it? So that's another great point that I gather from you. And I have a question. You mentioned core competence, and this is something that you do and what you focus on. And my questions here are, how do you define core competence, and how do we identify it? Although I know that's a process in itself.
So a couple tools I'll use and these tools guide you through the conversation. I don't look for the tools to expose the answer. I look for them to raise the conversation and let the people answer their own question. So one of them is a simple, everybody's familiar with the business dependency network. What you do is you start in the organization and you ask the person, what's your vision statement? What's your mission statement? And you're looking to surface out of that, why they exist, where they were founded. Many organizations, including corporations, that they'll change that as they evolve over time. At Microsoft, I spent 20 years at Microsoft. I think we went through 5 different vision statements, mission statements during that time. It started at a computer on a desktop, when they were 11 people. Then it moved to information at your fingertips. Then, it evolved, then it became empowering. And now with cloud technology, that's being refined again. But most organizations are like that. But from that, you try. I find about 10 to 15%, their mission statement, vision statement either hasn't been updated or wasn't flushed out because it doesn't align with what they're actually doing and how they're being perceived in the world. So that might be an exercise there. But let's say everything lines up. Then you say, okay, how do you bring that down into directives? And so half of this stays on the business side, the organizational side, the human management factor. But eventually down, what are the tools that you're looking to align to that? And so you start exposing some of the technology and the information, and then what feeds those tools, the data elements, the coding, is it off the shelf? Is it custom? And that, but you can actually get it down. We did one in Canada, healthcare. We broke it down to lines of code. I mean, we got very granular with that. We had the time to do it, and you had to do it right. Mm-hmm. There was no second chance on it. If it didn't work, it was going to be highly exposed and highly visible. So anyways, and your answer, then I'll do that. Then as you start surfacing the critical elements that are directly in line with the purpose of the organization, then you can start doing the evaluation. Okay, what are these going to cost us to maintain? And are there alternatives? So then you can start exposing that. Do we have to have all this data, or is the elements of this data readily available to other sources? Why do we have to own it? So you can start asking these kind of questions, and it starts moving the mindset. It starts a visual map. And I printed one out for a large retail organization, a global retail organization. I printed one out, and it was 6 foot tall by 40 foot long. And we got in a huge conference room, and I posted it up on the wall. And it was the first time they saw their layout from the organization, from their mission statement all the way down to elements of technology that they had invested in and data that they owned. And then we started raising the question, this data isn't unique. This data is readily available. Why do we own it? Is there security, a governance? Is there a logical answer to why do you have to host this data when it's readily available?
You know what?
Outside of the organization.
I have to say, Bob, I don't think I've seen this before, and I think this is brilliant. Your method here, your way of addressing and tackling this, uncovering everything at the top level, starting with the vision, that mission statement, understanding the why, the goals that we're trying to accomplish, and tying all that way down to the data points. I think that's really brilliant and really creates and brings the message across very well. I think in the process, you start creating that ownership too as you're uncovering these pieces and see which ones should be under what department, or which ones are enterprise level, and what metadata you are uncovering. I would assume there's a lot of uncluttering that does happen, and discovery and classification that happens as part of this entire process.
One of the things that surfaces, and there's a lot of debate that goes into this. So once again, being very timely in that, my definition of debate is to have the heated argument and drive it to a decision. Microsoft had 3 core principles, know when you're in the debate, and know when the decision's been made, and don't try to drag it back into the debate. But to really have a solid decision, you want to have all opinions. And I heard that back in 2000, and the light went on. And I started looking at, what's happening today. I started having a different perspective on it, and not a right or wrong, but it answered to me, okay, I can tolerate some of this heated discussion now if I know that it's a debate, but that's got to lead towards a decision. And the broader the debate, the more opinions, the more diverse you can have that debate, the better quality. So this raises a lot of debate in it. And part of that debate is the tools and the technology, why they even exist. And you start to hear a heated discussion. So I come in and say, why do we have that database technology, or why do we have that database? Well, the owner of it, now I'm attacking an individual because I raised the question. If that doesn't need to exist, maybe they don't need to exist in the organization. So it gets very sensitive. Absolutely. So you see all of that, but it starts surfacing, and you can go back to that core competency of the organization. Here's what they're about, and I'm not seeing an alignment, or the group through going through that exercise isn't seeing alignment in that. So I don't associate the individual with the tool, because they weren't born with that knowledge. That was a learned, and so their experience and everything still has huge value. So then you start looking, saying, okay, well, if that isn't required, do we have the strength and the presence of the information, the data or whatever that is required? Okay, well, that's going to take skill sets in that, and many of those skill sets are trenched. So you got to eliminate that sensitivity that you're talking about, prioritizing the information, the technology, not the people.
Absolutely.
And because the focus isn't there, there's where you have the people saying, well, this is who I am. No, it's not. It's what you do. Who you are and what you are has nothing with what you actually do. And that doesn't change. That's your master data management. It's elements that don't change. And you're trying to say, I live in reference. I'm a reference data element, not a master data. No, you're a master data element. You don't change. You can expand, you can enhance in that. But who you are, my hair isn't going to turn dark overnight without chemical influence.
Yes.
I'm going to wake up tomorrow and look pretty much like I look today in that. Now, 80 years, that's going to be a different story. But who I am doesn't change. I'm a master data element in the human reference model.
Absolutely. I'm just going to bring a few comments here because as Chris Ellsworth mentioned, it's also an opportunity for them to update their own skills as part of this conversation and as part of this project, as you're uncovering this stuff and as you're questioning the usage of those tools, that technology, and probably even spark a change. There's definitely that opportunity for them to update their skills, to adopt the new technology, to make a change, and that will benefit them personally as well. And I also want to mention that I think you've influenced Rachel here, that she's saying that, oh, Bob, I'm going to have to declutter my personal emails. I think we all need to, for sure.
I'm guilty of that. I'm not, like I said, I'm staying out of the right-wrong conversation here because I'm wrong on many of those issues. My email goes back to 1999. So I can't say they're all of them. And I have reference back to those, but it's mainly for context and putting, but no, there's no justification. There's other ways. With LinkedIn, with the tools out there, I can find the resources. I can reach out and identify the people I want to talk to. I don't need the email thread from 2004 and that. If I want to talk to some of my friends at IBM that work with us together on the Canadian healthcare system and that, there's all kinds of tools to get a hold of them.
So I was working for this accounting company at one point years ago, and we discovered this one memo as they were unpacking and really getting rid of a bunch of documentation. It was this printed memo that was put together, more than 20 years ago, obviously, by probably, I think it was their CEO at the time. And he was basically making a business case to bring emails on board into the company. And he would, he said that in 20 years' time, we would probably write a couple of emails a day. So we need to invest in it now. So, he got it right partially. Yeah. He definitely got emails on board, but we were all chuckling at his prediction on how much the usage would ramp up.
I think it was Thomas Watson Jr., the son of the founder of IBM, that said there's no reason to have more than 5 computers in the entire world. I can probably bring up some of my own predictions that didn't quite work out. My wife would be excellent at pointing those out. But anyways, yeah.
And I also want to mention that Alex Furry here said that I'll definitely try to keep your point on robust debate in mind in the next time I work on enrolling data owners. So there you go. You're already influencing young minds here.
Now, it for me, it was, I won't say epiphany, but it definitely did a 180 in my perspective. But once again, it's not the discussion of right or wrong. But yeah, I go into meetings, and when that discussion comes up, I actually encourage it. And then I start breaking down into the tool set, focusing on that, and the human element start distracting away. You're not this database. You're not this data technology or any type of IT technology. My dad was a carpenter, but he wasn't a hammer.
I love that.
Yeah.
I gotta start using that too.
I'll
have to use your dad's example though, but
no problem.
I have
yes.
question.
Yes, Diana.
There is one moment in your career when you worked with a company or within a company. Is there any moment that stands out where these concepts really made a huge difference in what the company became?
Okay, so I'm going to expose myself a bit. My favorite project of all time was the U.S. Marines, and it was the project that took the U.S. Marines into Iraq. So I was in Quantico, Virginia, and we're preparing to send a third. So a Marine is a Marine, and then your skill set is very secondary. So a third of the people in their large data center, one of multiple data centers in Quantico, a third of them were going to be deployed within 4 months. And the second week into it, the colonel brings me in, full bird colonel, brings me into his office, and he goes, "You do understand how you're going to be measured on the project." And I'm thinking, if you're in a colonel's office, I've had enough military background to realize you don't understand. They don't waste their time. So they're not going to bring you in to confirm something you already. And I said, "Sir, because I'm in your office, I'm going to assume I do not." He goes, "It's very simple." He goes, "Just like life insurance and health industries, and that can predict how many people are going to have a heart attack, and that we have those same algorithms. So we have a baseline of how many troops we'll probably lose in this effort. And if you do your job, that number should go down. And if you don't do your job, that number is going to go up, and it's on you."
Wow.
So that made it very personal. Where I exposed myself, my wife and I were very vocal during that time. There was a big debate, should we or should we not? And we were at dinner parties, in group meetings, neighborhoods, all that. And those words came back and haunted me, because it became very apparent about the second month into the project that I was going to have to go with them. And it was I love the Marine, because you talk about simplifying and bringing it down to a single sentence or two, they're masters at it. Yeah. And one of the little Marine sergeants, and I wondered how he could be a Marine. He was 98 pounds. His weapon weighed more than he did, but he was a Marine, and he looked over, and it was March 30th or March 31st of 2004. And he looked over and he said, "Sir, with all due respect, we don't want you to go. You're too old and you're too fat, and you'll get us killed trying to babysit you." And every single word he said was true. And that there's, and I sat there and said, "Look, I have no, dreams of glory in that. I don't want to go. I'm scared to death." But I said, I have a real strong conflict, because all these conversations were coming back there. And I said, I'm the only one that's been in the architecture of the solution, that when you get over there and it's not going to work, nothing this complex works when you turn the on switch. I said, there's nobody else that understands how to get all this stuff to work. And what the colonel has said was very true. This technology was core to the mission. And I said, I'm the only one that understands the architecture to make this work. Mm-hmm. So unless you can come up with some, and I remember the day, because it was the day after my wife's birthday, and she thought I was calling to wish her happy birthday, and I wasn't. And that was very emotional. And it was the day that the four Blackwater consultants were captured, contractors were captured, hung off the bridge, burned, and dragged through the streets. And that was on my desk in USA Today, the front page. Are you sure this is what we're going into? Are you sure? And I said, that doesn't change the truth. Somebody has to go that knows how to work this. Anyways, that got resolved. But yeah, I've been in three projects in my life that was the mission, was life saved or life's lost. And boy, that really gives you a different perspective on what you're actually doing. And, when it's one thing to say, hey, we're going to, get an advantage in this technology as a business, we're going to help increase our stock, whatever it is, those things are incredibly important, but they don't compare. Absolutely. And having gone through something like that really makes you slow down and think not only about what you're doing, but how are you doing it and what is the purpose of why you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, that really hit home, and yeah, shivers down my spine. Thank you for sharing that story. And it's definitely, that's when you see that direct involvement between data and the life of a person. And but even your work with the healthcare industry, I mean, all in all, maybe a bit more indirect, but it does have that impact on human welfare and life and quality. So there's definitely quite a bit of importance and weight added to the data and how to manage it properly.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes. So, Bob, we're approaching our end here. We're just a couple of minutes past. I think there's so much more to talk about, and I hope we can have you on again at one point if you're willing. And I do want to mention that you do have yours from all over the place. Hello from Bangalore. Data prioritization is a very important topic. Thank you for this. And thank you for watching, Arshad. And we definitely have people from Turkey and signing up all the way from South Africa. And of course, our local here and Indonesia. So a lot of people are watching. So thank you so much for sharing all these wisdoms with us.
No problem. My pleasure. I'll be glad to come back anytime where I can add value to the conversation.
We appreciate
it.
If
can find you on LinkedIn, is that the best way to connect with you, Bob?
Yes, it is.
So please follow Bob, connect with Bob. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer your questions. But I hope that you're also available for contracting work. And so people are able to contact you for that purpose as well, and we encourage them to do so.
Definitely. Anything that they need to get in front of the leadership and explain the value to the business, that's my passion.
And you've clearly proven it, and I think we've really taken a dose of knowledge and inspiration out of this session, so thank you again for joining with us.
Thank you both. My pleasure.
Thank you, Bob. Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend ahead.